Hi, my name is Samantha, and today I'm going to show you a step-by-step tutorial on how to make this stocking. So the first step to creating this stocking is to get your square cut pieces. And what you're going to do is draw a diagonal line on the back of 20 of the squares. Now that you have all of your diagonal lines drawn, you're going to line up the print squares with a background square and do this for all of the squares so that you can sew on both sides a 1/4 inch from the diagonal line. Now that there is a sewn line on each side of the diagonal line, you're going to cut directly on the diagonal line, creating 2 half square triangles. Now that you have your half square triangles, you're going to flip them over and press the seam to the dark side of the fabric. And then you'll want to trim off the dog ears and also make them square. Now that you have all of your squares cut and pressed, it is time to figure out the layout for your stocking. So I have from the pattern here just a little suggested layout. So I'm just going to lay out all of these squares in a pattern that is pleasing to me. Now that I have the layout how I want it, it's time to sew these squares together into rows, and then we'll sew the rows together to complete the top. Now that we have our rows sewn together, it's time to flip them over, press the fabric to the dark side, or press them open if you prefer, and then trim them so that they are nice and straight. And then it's time to sew those rows together and complete the top. Now here's the top all sewn together. Now it is time to get your batting and your backing and pin based, or you can spray based if you prefer. Just make sure it all stays together while you're quilting it. This is the top all quilted. Now it's ready to put the stocking template over it, and we cut out the stocking size. Now that the front's complete, we'll move on to the lining, and then the back and the tab, and then we'll put it all together to complete our stocking. Now it's time to work on our lining. So I'm getting my lining fabric out, and I'm going to lay the stencil over top, pin the stencil, and cut out the stencil shape, creating 2 linings. Before I sew my linings right side together, I'm going to stitch these applique letters of the initials of the recipient onto the front of my lining. Now that I have the recipient's initials stitched on there, even though they're a little crooked, that doesn't bother me too much. I am going to put the linings right side together and then stitch 1/2 inch seam all across the lining, leaving a 4-inch opening at the bottom. And this is so we can turn the stocking right side out at the end. We will leave the lining right sides together until the very end. With our lining complete, now it's time to work on the back of our stocking. So I'm just getting my batting and the back fabric, and I'm just going to quilt this really simple since it's just the back of the stocking. I'm just going to quilt some diagonal lines to match the fabric every few inches. So just really simple and really quick. I'm not even going to base this. Now that the back is quilted, I'm going to lay out my stocking template, and the important part here is that you want to lay it out the opposite way that you laid out your front. And this is because you're going to be putting your right sides together. So if you cut it the same way that you cut your front, you're not going to be able to put it right sides together. So make sure you cut it the opposite way, and then you'll be all set. Now we have the back and the top complete, and the lining. Now we just need to work on the tab. So I have already cut out my tab fabric from the leftovers from the back of the stocking. So I'm just going to iron that and sew it together in the next step. So to make your tab, you're going to fold and press the edges into the center and press. And then you're going to fold those together and press again, and it's going to be about 1/2 inch wide. And then you're going to take it over to your sewing machine and sew all around the edges. Now that you have all of the elements made, it's time to put together the stocking. So you're going to take your front and your back and put them right sides together, and then you're going to sew a 1/2 inch seam all around except for the top. Now that it's sewn together, you're going to clip the curves and then turn it right sides out. So now we're going to insert the stocking into the lining, and then we're going to stitch them together at the top. So what you're going to do is align the seams of the lining and the stocking and clip those together. And how the tab works into this is you're going to put the tab in between the stocking and the lining at the back right. And you'll want to fold the tab and put the folded part at the bottom. Now for the fun part, we're going to pull the stocking through the opening of the lining that we left. And this will also turn the lining right sides out. And what we're going to do is stitch that opening of the lining together. You can use a blind stitch. Nobody really sees it anyway, so I just do a 1/4 inch seam. Now we're going to stuff the lining into the stocking and then top stitch right there at the edge just to keep the lining in place. And there you have it. There is a step-by-step tutorial on how to make a stocking. I love how it turned out, and I hope the recipient loves it too. I'm going to fill this with some candy and a coloring book and some crayons. Merry Christmas!